Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kanga TV, home of North Melbourne fans, and welcome to the Round 8 preview. It feels like just yesterday we wrapped up all the Round 7 action from Adelaide Oval and that close loss to Port Adelaide, but there's no rest for the wicked. We're jumping straight into Round 8, and for good reason. North Melbourne is set to play its first Thursday night game, I think, in its history, against Essendon at Marvel Stadium, and there is no one better to join me and help me preview this one than journalist, podcaster, but most importantly, diehard Essendon fan Marnie Vinall. You've seen her on the ABC, you've seen her on the footy with Broden Kelly, and now it's time to welcome her to Kanga TV. She's got her Essendon cap on and she is going to help me preview all things Thursday night. I had a great chat with Marnes and hopefully you enjoy it just as much. I will leave all of her links to socials in the description below. How do you think this one is going to shape up? I'd love to hear your thoughts ahead of the game on Thursday night. Leave all of your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and share all of the Kanga TV action with your family and friends. Let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump straight into it. Here is Marnie talking all things North Melbourne, Essendon, and the Round 8 clash at Marvel Stadium.
Marnie
Nice.
Vinall.
I know,
Marnie
imagine if I was
squared.
musically talented. It would be so good.
Well, you are talented. You're very gifted, talking all things footy. And tonight, we don't have the journalist and we don't have the podcaster, but I've got the Essendon tragic, Marnie Vinall. Welcome to Kanga TV and welcome to the Round 8 preview.
Thank you so much. I feel like I've let you down by not dressing head to toe in Essendon gear.
That's so fine. Anything goes on this channel, and I don't think that too many North fans will be disappointed by that. So let's
Yeah, true.
talk to me, Mance. How are you feeling about Essendon season as a whole? You obviously got a game in hand, which is something we'll get to a bit later on, but you're sitting even ledger 3-3 with, like I said, a game in hand. How are you feeling about where you're at so far in 2025?
Kind of how I thought we would be looking about this time. I
Yep.
think that it's easy to get ahead, and a lot of Essendon people, I think, got a little bit ahead of themselves. But Essendon scraped a win over Port Adelaide, what beat Melbourne when they were in their really rough patch, and then beat West Coast by 2 points. It's not like they were any like comprehensive or significant wins, and they were
Yeah.
pretty ugly wins as they were. I know there's a lot of talk about how Essendon are potentially in the rebuilding, and I feel like if you're paying a lot of attention, you can see that coming. There was a lot of hope and optimism that with Brad Scott coming on board, that there was going to be a lot more stability, and that doesn't happen like that. Like that takes a while. You know this. Like
Yeah,
I
we
feel like
live it.
North and Essendon are actually in quite similar positions because also if you look at the lists, you can point and be like, oh my God, I love watching like Sheasel play. Harry Jones. I love watching Harry
We do
Jones
love
play.
Harry Jones.
But as a collective, they're just not at the same level that all of these other sides that are actually contending for the 8 are at. Like they're just not there. That's just the reality. And I think that you have to show up every side, not expecting to win, but just expecting to watch your team play.
Yeah.
You know
And
what
I
I
think
mean?
it's a really tricky spot to be in because, like you said, I think North and the Bombers are in quite a similar position. If I'm not mistaken, Brad Scott and Clarko have been at the respective clubs for the same amount of time. And as fans, we've been on the journey for decades. I mean, Bombers
Mhm.
fans, I don't need to remind you, you haven't seen a winning final in, however long. North
20, it's
haven't
20 years.
seen yeah, North haven't seen any finals action for, almost a decade now. So we've been in it for a lot longer than the coaches have been in it. And we've been in it for longer than the time it's going to take for them to turn the ship around. And I said this a couple of times. Clarko actually said it in a press conference. It's finding that balance between patience to be building something and patience towards building something great, but also understanding that the fans have been and North, especially like in the bottom two for seasons on end now and kind of struggling to find the light at the end of the tunnel. So, how are you finding that balance of patience, but also wanting to see improvement at the same time?
Think I am in an unbelievably privileged position as a sports journalist that I I'm kind of removed from the fan experience because I'm
Yeah.
even if West Coast had beaten Essendon, well then I'm writing about West Coast and I can feel that and I can jump into that. mode, and I've really become more of a footy fan than just an Essendon fan. And
Yeah.
sometimes I actually have to remind myself of what it feels like when you are just fronting up with one team every single week, because I feel like I can lose a little bit of empathy sometimes, even like coming into this season, because I was really looking at every single team. It's like, great, Essendon are going to finish 14th, maybe 13th. And I spoke to other Essendon fans about it, and they were shocked that I had them so low. And I was like, yeah, but you can't, like, who are you putting below Essendon? If you look at where
Yeah.
they're at and look at where everywhere else is at. So I've got this really, like, I take a step back when I look at Essendon, and that's kind of removed, but like a little bit of the magic probably for
Yeah.
me, which sucks. Like, that is the price that I've had to pay, because I can just enjoy the story of whatever game it is. Even Anzac Day, like, that is such a big marquee game,
Yeah.
and they were looking like close. They were up
Yeah.
at one point, and it was very
Yeah.
exciting. But it's just like, and also you probably understand this when it gets to the fourth quarter and Collingwood are kicking away, and it's just like you resign to the fact, okay, that game's gone. That's done. There's nothing I can do about this. I just have to sit back, and that's another. And then you just watch all of these
The
goals coming
onslaught.
against you. There's nothing you can do about it. And I feel like I am in that really privileged position where I can like switch it in my brain and be like, okay, well, what does this mean for Collingwood?
Yeah, and it's definitely a unique position to be. And then I guess I've always thought about it, and I've always, because I too study journalism and I was a journalist in my past life. And I always thought about potentially re-entering a career in footy and in footy journalism. And what stopped me from doing that, and what sort of pivoted me to go down this route instead, is the fact that I think about football as a whole, and often the memories of mine that are attached to footy and the special moments in footy is actually the ones I build with my family or my friends. And a lot of the big wins that I've had and I've experienced, take the Cam Zurhaar 2022 game as an
Mhm.
example, right? It was a massive
Yeah.
game, and North fans still, it's such a legacy game. It was almost 3 years ago, and North fans still talk about it all the time. I was living in Perth and I moved home at the end of May in 2022. And that win was the first win since pre-COVID that I had been to with my dad and my brother, who I go to the footy with every week. So
Mhm.
that's what sticks in my mind. And it's that magic. And you just said you kind of lose the magic a little bit being on the other side. And it is a very privileged position to be in. And I am privileged as much as well to be in this position. But I guess when it comes down to it, those are the things that are so sacred to me. And I think that's what pulls me away from the traditional journalism side and more into now launching Kanga TV and like kind of being in this position instead.
Yeah, well, just like if you think about how special it's going to feel when Kangas are doing so well, because you've been through all of this, it's just going to mean so much more. Like the magic is going to feel so much like richer in your body. I'm actually a
Yeah.
bit jealous of
Well, thank you anytime. Anytime you want to jump on board for a week or two, just call me. I'm
that.
happy to adopt you as a North supporter for the week. But I don't think you're going to want to do that this Thursday night. It's North's first Thursday night game since this has become a bit of a marquee time slot in the AFL fixture over the past couple of seasons. How do you feel as an Essendon fan going into this one?
Not great. I won't be tipping Essendon this week. And
Wow.
that's
Okay.
exactly what I mean by going off the last, like what we just talked about. Where like I wish I could just be like Essendon every week with my whole chest. But I
Yeah.
just, because with my job, I can't. And so I think about it realistically. And I'm like, realistically, this is not looking great for Essendon. And I know that there's a lot of outside commentary about, oh, what a great game that's going to be on Thursday night. Fine, it could be a shocking game. Sure, these are two sides that aren't doing very well. We know that. But it also, and I want to mount the argument that it actually could be a very interesting game, because these are two
Oh, yeah.
sides that they're very much, they have to be playing at their very best to get wins at the moment, but their very best is good and enjoyable and entertaining. And if you get two sides that actually show up, it's going to be a pretty even contest, I think, and that could
Yeah.
make it really interesting. And let's just hope, well, I'm just hoping it's close.
I mean, look, last year we played each other in the first half of the season. I think it was about round 10. The Bombers ended up winning by about 7 goals, and we didn't come close to anyone in the first half of last season. We only really turned it on after the bye. But 2023, we played each other twice, and both of those games were decided by a kick or two, both
I love
super
it.
entertaining and both really competitive. So I don't think it's going to be quite the same as it was last year. If anything, I think it'll be closer to the two encounters we had previously. And I feel like over the past maybe 5 or 6 seasons, a lot of our encounters have been quite close. They've all gone the Bombers' way. We haven't beat the Bombers, I think, for close to a decade, I want to say now. I don't actually remember the last time we beat the Bombers. I want to say it was maybe 2015 even. Like
Okay.
you had the wood over us for quite some time now. So I'm really interested to see how this one goes. I think the performance for us against Port Adelaide was really gutsy, and it was really good for us to refine some of that heart and soul. But there are definitely a few stats that really stand out to me as things that we probably need to look to address ahead of this game. One of those being 7 of our goals came from free kicks on Saturday. And North have not had the best of luck with umpiring throughout the season. But then if you look at this game, how much of the umpiring on Saturday really contributed to us being as competitive as we were. I guess you'll never know, and that's part and parcel of some of the pressure that we had inside our forward 50, but then also some of Port Adelaide's undisciplined acts. And, every fan thinks that the umpires work against them. And, their stats to show that North so far this season have been on the receiving end of some unfair and maybe one-sided umpiring. But I do agree with you. I think both teams at their best really do have the ability to take it up to the best sides in the competition, and both sides at home under the roof of Marvel. I think it makes for a really interesting and entertaining contest.
And one thing that you always have to say about North is that the supporters turn up. I feel like this is going to be a very good atmosphere and a very good crowd, which will make those umpiring decisions if they keep going, because like across the board, they've been a little bit sketchy this season. If that keeps going, it's going to be a very interesting sounding atmosphere, I feel. And there's also like so many like internal storylines. I mean, Brad Scott obviously knows North pretty well, and then
Yeah.
all of our players have been injured, and so Goldstein's back as our best player in the side. And, like he's come from North, and he's up against arguably one of the best rucks in the competition. I just feel like there's a chance for a lot of like interesting narratives.
I think so too. I wanted to touch on Todd Goldstein. Obviously, Ben Mackay is the other one, but I don't know. I feel like he's not really as much of a factor, to be honest, in this game. It's funny to say that Goldie's going to be more of a factor than Mackay will, considering the storylines and the drama that followed each of them in their quest to go off to Essendon. So obviously you're down to your third ruckman in Goldie. Sam Draper's injured. Who's your first ruckman that's also injured?
Nick Bryan.
Nick Bryan. So Goldie,
Yeah.
I actually thought Goldie was quite good on Anzac Day. He
He was
was able to run with Cameron. I was quite impressed, if I'm
he
honest.
had wait, I've actually got this here. So he had 38 hitouts to Darcy Cameron's 35. That is great. He beat him in hitouts. And I find the hitouts to be the most frustrating stat because obviously hitouts to advantage is what matters. But
Of
I'm just going to
course.
look at that. And I'm like, great job, Goldie. He was one of the best for Essendon, which is a little bit comical. It was Essendon were pretty bad against Collingwood.
I
Um, but it was a lot of, and there's so much internal like love already. He's only been with Essendon, as you know, for a few years, but he's
yeah.
already one of like he's almost a cult figure. Everyone just loves
Yeah.
36-year-old Goldie. He's one of our best players.
I've seen the old gold meme floating around on Twitter. I have and Instagram. I have taken a liking to that. He grew up a Bombers supporter. And I think he's obviously wanted to elongate his career. And you can't blame them. I mean, look, there's always going to be a lot of romance attached to long serving players. Goldie played over 300 games for North, and he was a champion at North Melbourne. But I kind of look at the way that North supporters in 7 games, the way they've embraced Luke Parker and Jack Darling in particular. The two of them, like,
Exactly.
I love both of them so much. And I obviously am so grateful to know them both on a personal level. But even on field, Luke Parker's been one of our best performers all year, and Jack Darling has definitely been able to influence the forward line as a whole. And so I think it's so special. Like, those two guys will probably in their careers go down as Sydney and West Coast legends, respectively. and Goldie will go down as a North Melbourne legend, respectively. But I think for supporters of the second club, so for North and then Essendon with Goldie, I think there'll always be a lot of love and that real soft spot
Mm.
for them because they chose us. They wanted to come and play for us and contribute to our on field resurgence in some way before they finished up in the AFL.
What do you think the reception is going to be like from the North Melbourne supporters to Goldie on Thursday night, but also on field? Because obviously Jason Horne-Francis is a very different character when it comes to North Melbourne, but there was a
Yeah.
lot of spice in that game.
Yeah, it's funny as a fan, I'm sort of past the Horn Francis thing, but I found it so interesting how emotional the players got about it. Jai Simpkin was the one who
Mm.
started it all in particular.
Yeah.
I don't think the reception for Ben Mackay will be too kind from players and fans alike. He didn't leave on the best of terms at North Melbourne, so I could understand that. I would be disappointed if there was any animosity towards Goldie. I think it's kind of worked out the best for both of us. Tristan Sherry, up until the start of last year, to me, I never really understood the hype and I never understood why we were opting to put our faith in him and why we let Goldie walk. But it's almost like the best thing that's happened to him because it's almost like the ghost of Goldie, let's call it that, has been
Yeah.
lifted and Sherry sort of be able to come into his own, really make that ruck position his own. Whereas for Goldie, he's obviously moved on. He's been able to take on a bit of a mentor role for the younger rucks, and now he's playing, which I don't think anyone would have thought at the
Yeah.
start of the
Now
year.
he's the star of our side.
And good on him. I mean, honestly, he really
No.
deserves it. And I hope that, he has a good game. I hope it's not at the cost of North Melbourne winning. But I only wish the best for him. And I think I speak from majority of North supporters when I say that.
Yeah, I feel like Luke Parker's reception from Sydney on field, like I think Chad went to like high five him after he scored a goal, is like I wouldn't mind seeing some cheek like that,
Yeah.
like that's fun and not
Yeah.
actual like malice. I love that
Yeah.
stuff.
I absolutely love it. I think it's bringing fun into the game without and a bit of
Yeah,
personality into the game without taking it overboard, for
yeah,
sure.
I agree.
Um, Brad Scott,
Yeah.
famous North Melbourne coach, obviously now taking the reins at Essendon. How do
Mm.
you find him as a coach and what he's been able to do for the Bombers since stepping into the role as head coach?
I feel like coaches are always in the hot seat. So maybe this isn't exclusive to him at all, and it's just heightened because of Essendon's history and where they're at currently, but he feels like a very divisive figure amongst fans. People love him or hate him, and there was so much optimism when he first came to the club, and everyone wants things to happen immediately. Footy fans just want things to
Yeah,
happen so quickly,
yeah,
and it becomes annoying how much coaches talk about systems and processes, but they
yeah.
are very important, and it got very frustrating that Brad Scott continuously just said that in press conferences. No matter what the
Yeah.
question was, we're just focusing on systems and processes. I'm like, oh,
Great.
I get it. Great. But he is right that that's important and it takes time to build. And also, if you're building all of these systems around very young players, and then you have half of those players go out injured, that makes things really tough.
Yeah,
I do think that he can be outcoached. I think he was outcoached on Anzac Day. I think it was a really good example, but also the playing lists are very different, especially when it comes to age and experience. But it was a really interesting example, the way that both Craig McRae and Brad Scott handled the power outage of the comms system, where
yeah,
Craig very much like, I back my players in. Easy to say when you're doing well.
of
And
course.
Brad Scott was just like, okay, well, the game's being lost and you don't have any
Any
way
control.
to talk
Yeah,
to your, yeah, any control, any way to talk to
yeah,
your players. And it's not even just, okay, well, I need to tell my players like where to go and what to do, but also like encourage them.
yeah.
Very important when you have young players that are
Oh,
getting put
yeah.
on the ropes and put under pressure. But it was fascinating to watch those two coaches have very different approaches to the same situation. I feel like Brad is quite an emotional player, emotional coach, as much as
Yeah.
he puts out that he isn't. I feel
No,
like
he
he
is, for
really
sure.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much emotion that comes through. And I think that that's probably good for Essendon players. And Essendon also, they need a proper like kick in the ass, to put it I don't know how else to
To
eloquently
put it
put that.
lightly. Yeah.
And I do think that Brad has the passion to do that, and he's just got to
Yeah.
be given a little bit more time. And we also put these coaches under such heavy spotlights and interrogate them to the be all and end all, which we should because they're in charge of these players and they're in charge of these clubs and they're managing these players that have there's so much heart involved. Like as a fan that like
Oh yeah.
they're responsible for so many people's hearts and souls. So they should be looked at like that. But we scrutinize them, and often premiership coaches come out after a period of adversity. So I think it's easy to be like, I don't like that coach because we're not doing well, instead of actually like backing in and sticking through. And I do
Yeah.
think Essendon fans need to just stick through a little bit because if Essendon are to come good, like stability is the one thing that club's been saying we need.
Yeah, 100%. And it's the same with North. I think the players definitely feel that. I think it's really hard. Like, I mean, especially with North, you look at Clarko and Brad Scott had a period of success at North. It obviously didn't quite get to the grand finals and the premierships that every team hopes for. Clarko obviously has that experience, but a lot of these rebuilds that we see from, and I think Hawthorn's probably the best example of that. They've had an 18-month rebuild and now they're already back, in contention. Um, Look at the foundation they've come from. It's a successful club. They've had
Yeah.
pretty recent success. They've had stars walking through the door for years now, and it's a breeding ground for success. It's a winning culture. They know what it takes. Whereas for both North and Essendon, they've had significant off-field struggles, which have probably trickled on field for quite some time now. And I
Mm.
think that we probably on the outside underestimate how difficult it is to actually mend that and get it to a point where everything else around it is stable, and then you can start breeding a winning culture and a successful culture. A lot of people, there's been a lot of talk about Jai Simkin this week and how maybe as a leader he's not strong enough, and I definitely feel like the past couple of weeks he's been really off, and his season has probably been underwhelming as a whole. And you compare him to Luke Parker, who's come across and is having such a big impact in such a short amount of time. But you look at the career success that Parks has had, the win-loss ratio, the grand finals, the premierships. Sydney is one of the most successful clubs in the competition, has been for decades now. And Jai, on the other hand, I mean, someone said that his jumper number is higher than the wins he's had at North in his career. Now, I actually don't
Like,
know if
isn't he
that's
number
true.
12?
Number 12.
Oh,
I actually don't know if that's true, but honestly, it got me thinking, and it's not a fair point. He wouldn't know how
mm.
to lead players to
Yeah, that would be
success.
true. I don't know if because North have lost 97 of their past 113 games. So
So there
that
you
feels like
go.
accurate.
It,
Yeah.
I mean, it's outrageous. Like when you think about it, it's funny, but no, actually, it could be true.
Yeah, that must be so hard because you're carrying so much on your shoulders. Like
Yeah.
emotionally, you're trying to guide this young group. You're trying to like be there for them and be a support system for them, and then also play really well. That's
Yeah, it's a
tough.
lot. It is tough. And I think heading into Thursday night, we do have a little bit of momentum now and hopefully a little bit of confidence back into us. It's probably the best result we've had at Adelaide. We've never won at Adelaide Oval, but it was probably the best result we've had there for a while, if ever. So I think going into this game, we're back at home. I know it's only a 5-day break, but I really just hope we lock in and just throw everything we have at the Bombers. And like you, I think it's going to be a pretty tough contest. And I think it's pretty even across the board.
I just have like this gut feeling that it's going to be like a Cam Zohar 5 goal game or a Peter Wright 5 goal game.
Well, I mean, we don't know what the result of the tribunal is going to be, but Paul Curtis was handed a 3-week suspension. We'll have to wait and see if he lines up. But Cam Zurha hopefully will step up to the plate if we are missing Paul Curtis. He's been, our shining light so far in season 2025. With the exception of that potential change, and maybe a Dersma comes in for him. Dersma was the sub on Saturday. Maybe Dersma comes in and plays a full game. Maybe they opt to go for a third tall in the forward line, like a Bryn Teakle to help in the ruck, or maybe a Finbar Maley will have his chance to debut. The only other changes I probably see happening is Darcy Tucker not a touch. In a shutdown role, he played forward against Rosie. It just was an experiment that failed miserably. And I'm glad we tried something, but it failed. And there's no way that you can play again on the back of a zero touch, three tackle game to 3/4 time.
Yeah.
So I would love to see the likes of a Will Phillips come in for him if it's defensive pressure we need. And I do think it's defensive pressure we need. Then I think Will Phillips is a no-brainer, should be recalled. We have plenty of guys who can get their hands on the footy and use the ball well and wisely. I think we do need a bit of balance in the midfield. Parker's obviously playing a more defensive role. Wardlaw plays that sort of defensive role. So bringing Will Phillips to just be that real hard nut tackling player. And then the only other thing I'd potentially look at is we only had two tall defenders going into the game against Port Adelaide. Structurally, Mitch Georgiades is their only real developed key forward. Ollie Lord had a great game, and Charlie Comben did what he could to stop him. But Charlie Comben's more of that, floating intercept type player. So it's whether we look at bringing back a Logue or a Core, who were both dropped for the game. Core is a great matchup for Kyle Langford. He just blanketed him in the same game last year. Or do we look to like a Toby Pink and maybe go Pink, Callan Dawson, and then Charlie Comben? Plenty of options, and there's not a lot of time to figure it out. So I'm very interested to see how we go at selection. What about for the Bombers? Do you think there's any potential changes either for your own structure or to match up against North structure?
Well, thankfully, Brad Scott did a presser today, and Harry Jones, who rolled his ankle on Anzac Day, he'll be available for selection, and so will Dylan Shield. He was benched with tightness and cramping, which some of these old players that are still younger than me get sometimes.
Yeah, of
I
course.
hate when they say veteran. I'm like, that's a child that you're speaking about.
Oh, yeah, I feel the same way.
But Brad also said that he's looking at there'll be a few changes to selection based off what's been going on in the VFL. So you'd think that means Elijah Sardis is going to be coming back because he was missing from Anzac Day because there was just such a tight turnaround between the VFL game he played and the AFL game, and they're managing him, which I like. I really like managing players, especially when they're young. And then also Zach Johnson, who had 33 touches, 8 marks, and 6 intercepts in the VFL. And I love
legacy game.
Yeah, and obviously like AFL is such a step up from VFL, but it's nice to have players to get excited about. Like, even just like the Essendon fan base getting so excited about like Kako and Caddy, and they haven't been having amazing games. I think that there was way too much pressure put on them, and then Kako scoring Essendon's first goal of this year of the season.
Yeah,
I think that's made that really tough that he hasn't had another game where he's really shown. Like, they're just developing, they're just kids. Like, that's just the way that it is. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in on out for them, because obviously we're just so injury depleted that it's kind of like our B teams out there anyway. There's not a lot you can do.
And that makes it tough. And I also think just on the Kako thing, we've been having a similar discussion with Colby McKercher in his second year, and to an extent Harry Sheasel as well. Probably not the same discussion around Harry Sheasel, but for Kirch, he's definitely suffering from second year blues. And I don't think we should be looking at a bit of time in the VFL as a punishment. I think it's actually maybe something they just need to refine their form a little bit and regain a little bit of confidence, because it's great to give them exposure at the top level, but how detrimental is that if the performances keep piling up the way they do and the noise externally just gets worse and worse? I know we do need to expose our players to criticism. It is a way for them to get better, sure, but also at what point does it turn detrimental to their confidence and to their form on field?
I totally agree. And sorry to talk about a player outside of these two, but seeing Jack Ginnivan be dropped to the VFL, get 4 goals and just have a standout game, I think that just did wonders for his confidence
100%.
Because he played so well when he came out against West Coast. I was like, a run around in the VFL can just be like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like
100%. And sometimes that's all the players need. So it'll be interesting. I think there's a lot that's going to happen between when we're recording this on Monday night. The game's already in 4 days time, 3 days time. There's going to be a lot that happens between now and then. Sitting here Monday night, we don't know what the teams look like. We don't know the outcome of the Paul Curtis tribunal case. Give us a tip. Give us a final tip.
I feel like because I'm doing this with you, I have to tip in Essendon, but I already told you that I'm going to be tipping North this week.
Okay,
Um,
let's rephrase. Give me a head tip and a heart tip.
oh, okay, great. My head tip, North by, I'm gonna say 8. Like I want it to be
Oh God,
so
great,
close. And then my heart tip is Essendon by 8.
great.
I want it to be, I want it to be close. So actually Essendon by 2. I really want to see, I mean the West Coast game was hard to watch for that final quarter, but I just love those games
Yeah.
where you're like really in it in that fourth quarter.
Oh yeah,
Like
it
your
sucks you
whole
in.
body feels like it is like almost floating in the air. Like you are so in
Yeah,
it. I want that
yeah.
feeling.
Okay, well, I mean, I hope that if that feeling comes, it ends up being a Northland at the end of the day.
What's your heart and head, and are they the same?
Yeah, I mean, look, I always go in glass half full. I always tip North. This is why I don't do footy tipping because I'll never tip against North. I'd back us in. Look, I'd say probably about a similar margin, maybe like 10 points. And I do get criticized a lot outside of the safety net of the North Melbourne supporter group and Kanga TV. And people just say I'm completely delusional. And that's fine. I'll cop it. But you know what? I
Yeah.
really do believe that we're building something special. And I think that our backs are while we probably alleviated a little bit of pressure from the performance on Saturday, I still think our backs are really, really far up against the wall. 2 of our 3 games coming up are winnable. We've got Essendon on Thursday night. We play Brisbane in Tasmania, which, you know, we'll give it a crack, but I don't know how that
Yeah.
will land. But then we play
Yeah.
Richmond at the MCG the following week. So
Oh, that's
really, we
good.
should go into that 3-week patch thinking, yeah, let's just get fired up and let's see if we can get a couple of wins here. I definitely back us in to bring our A game. And I just want to see us throw everything we have at the Bombers. And if it's not good enough, it's not good enough. But I do think it's good enough. So I guess the only way we're going to find out is by being there and being in all the action.
I really hope that these are two sides that come and arrive feeling like backs against the wall, but at the same time, absolutely winnable games until we get that
Yeah.
like proper fight.
Well, I think if anything, I'd love the 2 teams to unite and just shut the rest of the AFL world up and be like, you want
Yes.
Thursday night footy? You're going to
True.
get Thursday night footy.
And sorry, but a better crowd than is at the MCC for every Melbourne game. I'm sorry to like bring them in and for that drive-by, but it's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, good atmosphere regardless.
Yeah, if you're watching this, get down to Marvel on Thursday night. Essendon take on North. It's the Marnes Cup. The
Oh
Marnie Cup.
my God.
Let's go. We've claimed it.
I am obsessed with that actually, yes.
We're taking it. We're going to nickname it that from here on out, Marnes. Thank you so much for joining me for the chat and for the preview. Best of luck on Thursday night for the rest of the season, but not too much luck unless you're going to come and cheer on North with me.
Thank you so much. It's so funny saying like my own name because I never say it elsewhere, but thank you,
Yeah.
Marnie.
It's funny for those people aren't going to know we've known each other for a few years now, and the first time I ever emailed you was to invite you to an event at my old job, and I said, "Hey, Marnie, great name," and that was it. Destined
It's
friends,
true.
I
It is
think.
a great name.
It is. Mans, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll see you very, very soon.
Thanks.